Have you ever had a dream that felt so real that you were still impacted by it? Like you couldn't shake off that feeling for a while, even after you woke up. According to Cartwright's theory, dreaming diffuses the emotional charge of the event and so prepares the sleeper to wake ready to see things in a more positive light. To me, video games are similar. Game experiences can be compared with dreams, each one different and unique and may vary from person to person. What sets it apart is that you are not a passive spectator, you're interacting with the system. 20 odd years ago, Age of Empires 2 came into my life and I learned about different civilizations. Zeus came into my life and I got interested in Greek mythology. Warcraft 3 gave me a look into the world of fantasy, magic, and mythical creatures. It's considered that video games are a source of entertainment. But can they be something more? Can a game have socio-cultural impact? Can a game help you heal? Can games provide teachable moments? The answer to all this is yes. When you watch a movie and if you have to retell the story, you tend to address the characters by their names. It's always in third person. But when it comes to games, more often than not, it's you. You're the player. You transform into that character. It's personal. You're invested. It's your choice. Welcome to the wonderful world of games. I am Purnima Sitaraman. I am a game designer and I've been in the gaming industry for 15 years now. I believe in using the power of gaming to create a meaningful and impactful change in thinking. Let's dive right into the subject. Researchers Hunick, LeBlanc, and Zubek came up with the MDA framework, where MDA stands for Mechanics, Dynamics, and Aesthetics. Let's focus on aesthetics for now. When I say aesthetics, it's not about the visual setting, it's about the fun element of it. It's about how you engage with the game or what makes you engage with it. Think about your movie experience in a theater. What is the aspect that excites you? Is it the movie? Is it the ambiance? Is it the popcorn, the fun seats, maybe the sound system, the large screen, or maybe it's watching the trailers or ads? It could be any or a mix of all of it. Now, the MDA framework says that there are many types of aesthetics, including but not limited to the eight that we shall discuss here. The first one is sensation. Game as sense pleasure. So, have you looked at a game and just been mesmerized by the visuals? Maybe it was the music that appealed to you. So, sensation is about the game appealing to any or a combination of your senses. It stimulates it. It brings out different emotions in you: fear, joy, stress, happiness, any of it. The second one is fantasy, game as make believe. I can play an elf, a vampire, a World War veteran, even a blob. People like to role play. You get to be someone or something that you are not. It also gives you the illusion of power, skill, and superiority. The third one is narrative, game as drama. Now we love stories. From gathering around our grandparents to listening to those lovely folk stories to our panchatantras to series and movies, we as humans love stories. Games as drama allow you to be a part of these stories. The fourth one is challenge, game as obstacle course. Maybe it is a smart puzzle. Maybe you missed that thorny pit. Overcoming an obstacle is what challenge can be. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be difficult, but the aspiration is to clear that challenge. The fifth one is fellowship, game as social framework. Humans are social creatures and we like to collaborate. Fellowship talks about that. Games where you collaborate for a common goal. Let's team up and attack a monster. Let's come together in a multiplayer game. The whole team spirit together as a pack aspect. When we talk about collaboration, let's also mention competition, which is also inherent in humans. Now, this may not be listed as a core aesthetic in the paper, but it's a relevant one. We often want to be better than the other person. When we talk about social frameworks, thus both collaboration and competition have equal prominence. The sixth one is discovery. Now, game as uncharted territory. Finding something new. Maybe it's a crafting recipe. Maybe it's a hidden room. Maybe it's a treasure. You're looking for something that may not be right in front of you. You're searching for it. The seventh one is expression. Game as self discovery. As humans, we have the innate need to express in any form. Maybe art, maybe how we talk, maybe how we dress, maybe the things we own or the things we buy. Games in different ways allows you to express yourself. We can customize characters, we can decorate our farms and gardens and homes any way we want. The eighth one is submission or abnegation. Game as pastime. You're tired after a long day's work. You just want to pick up a game, do your routine actions, and not overthink and just forget your stress. Basically, you want to zone out, disengage from your real life. One might say it could be a form of flow state too, a strange form of acceptance. Irrespective of being such a wonderful medium, we often associate games with the bad side of things. So let's try to address some of them today. Let's start with you're not a gamer. Now, in some of my talks, whenever I've asked the audience, how many of you are gamers or do you play games? I've seen a lot of hands that don't go up. Of course, there might be a few who don't play, but when I probe further, I've got the response that, oh, but I just play casual games or that I don't play that frequently. So my question was never about how good you were or if you play games at a professional level, and yet. So I feel that we have started to internalize that we are not gamers. It's probably because of the elitism we have in gaming, like the unwanted toxicity. So only those who play hardcore games or spend their time playing are considered gamers. I disagree. So I've created a spectrum for players. I call it the broad-minded spectrum. So I feel that while games are definitely made for a kind of target audience, we ourselves can pick any game and play it anywhere on the spectrum of casual to hardcore. So, for instance, I can take a game like Ludo and play it at a hardcore level. Or I can even pick up something like a Call of Duty and play it at a casual level. So, there might be a learning curve to understand how to play a game. But aside from that, you as a player, you play the game for your own reasons. And this reason may or may not be similar to another player. It ties back to games being like dreams and crafting our own unique experiences. Now, let's go to the next one. Games are a boys' club. This has deeper roots into patriarchy and how a girl in the household has to, learn her ways in the kitchen and do chores before this kind of entertainment access is given to her. In many cases, these girls are given a device or system to play which may be owned by their father or brother, so they have access to it only after them. Now, these are entry barriers. On the other end of the spectrum, within the gaming industry, we don't have enough women and marginalized genders in leadership roles. We need to work on equity to make it a level field and thus make it equal for all. Today, when we factor in casual games, and rightfully so, we are seeing that we have about 48 to 50% of our players who are women. Yet only 20% of the global average are women game developers. While we have discussed some of the social norms that dictate this in some way, there's also a lack of awareness. Which brings us to the next point. Games are a waste of time. When we say we want to learn swimming or a physical sport or music or dance, our parents are usually supportive of it. But when it comes to gaming or even watching TV, we call it a waste of time. And then there are edutech companies who are using gamification as a form to teach students better. Games are not a waste of time when consumed in limits, of course. Now, games can be pure stress busters that help you in your day to day life too. Also, much like how you can learn music to be a musician, you can play games and learn about it to become a game developer. You can learn programming and be a game programmer, sign up for 2D or 3D art and get on board as a game artist. If you like to just play games and find all the nooks and crannies and bugs, hop on as a game tester. If you understand all the systems and how they work, maybe game design calls you out. If you love data analysis, product management may be for you. Are you good at managing timelines and processes? Maybe production is your route. You name it and you will find a role in gaming. In fact, besides game development, you can also choose to be a professional gamer or a streamer. Of course, as with any career, it is your skill that will take you ahead in your field. Coupling with the previous points that we discussed, let's also address the facet that games are addictive. Yes, it is true. Games are addictive in nature. In fact, as game designers, we often talk about the positive feedback loop, which I call the ADE, which stands for the adrenaline and dopamine effect. Now, adrenaline pumps you up to finish a task, overcome a challenge, complete a level, and the reward or gratification of completion releases the dopamine that allows you to carry on for your next challenge. This is inherent in most games, which is why you can easily lose track of time. You achieve the flow state. Game design follows psychological aspects to give player the best experience. But you know how the saying goes, too much of a good thing is still bad. So as with life and game design, you need to pace these happy moments, else they start to dictate you. For young gamers who are not able to differentiate between this, they tend to get lost in the addiction of it. Awareness, understanding, and support is key. As parents, understand why your kids play games. Do set time limits, but do not mock them for playing. They find comfort and solace in gaming. Maybe they end up meeting people like them and feel that it is their safe place. Now, on the other hand, players have to understand that physical and mental health is important. and that they should take frequent breaks, give it some rest, do physical activities. In fact, having a good physical and mental regime only improves your gameplay skill and your experience. One must also just understand the types of games out there. Now, hyper casuals are short attention span seeking games, and free to play are something that demands bouts of short to medium attention span to larger time sinks over a period. And then there are premium games which might seek a larger attention span, and they usually have a finite end. But this finite end could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 100 hours. Now, no matter the kind of game you like, setting a time and budget aside for it is a healthy behavior. Now, finally, let's also talk about the most common one, which is games make you violent. Now, there are enough studies that have already disproved this statement. Games are not invoking violence or making you violent. A setting of the game could be violent in nature, just like movies, which is why we have an age rating for these kind of games. We are not addressing the root cause of these problems and instead using games as a scapegoat. So recently, someone stabbed a customer at a restaurant because they complained that the tissues were dirty. These aggressions are much more deep rooted. Snapping can happen for the smallest of things. As we say in statistics, we talk about how correlation does not imply causation. Some of the points I mentioned earlier about awareness, understanding, and support is key. Now that we have covered the MDA framework, busted some myths, let's revisit how games can be so much more. I'm going to just list a few games that deal with different things. The indie games market is doing a commendable job in coming up with more creative topics, be it social, cultural, emotional, or political. Games like Gris deal with grief and take you through the 5 stages of it. Celeste is about depression and anxiety, and recently the developers mentioned that the character is a transgender. We have games like Hellblade that talk about psychosis. We have That Dragon Cancer and Last Day of June that is about losing a loved one. The opening scene of Ori and the Blind Forest is so emotional that even in a fantasy setting, it actually appeals to your senses. On personal side of things, my dream project is to marry Carnatic music with games as an ode to my late aunt Guru T.R. Balamani, who has left behind amazing musicians like Shankar Mahadevan and Bombay Jayashree. I want the players to go through the journey of Navarasa or 9 emotions because I feel music and games both can address emotions so well. Papers, Please is a puzzle simulation game where you can essay the role of an immigration officer and you see the different characters trying to immigrate and start to relate or try to understand their problems. We have Orwell that talks about surveillance and touches upon privacy concerns. We have games that teach you basic coding skills, music, dance, all of that. While it is not indie, I would like to mention this one example. When the 800-year-old Notre Dame church unfortunately burnt down, not only did the game dev community help raise funds to rebuild it, but the game Assassin's Creed Unity actually had a replica of the church. Over 5,000 hours of research and roughly 14 months of effort was put into recreating this in the game. And today, it might be helping in rebuilding the Notre Dame church. There are a lot of posts about how games and game communities have helped people overcome insecurities, introversion, and even suicidal thoughts. We need not limit games to just one facet of it. Games can be just pure entertainment, and yet they can be so much more than that. Sit back, think about all the games you've played. Think about why you played it. Ask the people around you on why they did. Understand the psychological aspects of games. Understand the power of the medium and how we can use it to bring about a change in thinking. But remember, games are just a medium that can put across different viewpoints to you. But you, as the player who's consuming it, can choose to take it to the next level. It's you. You are the player. You transform into that character. It's personal. You're invested. It's your choice. Thank you so much for tuning in and giving me your valuable time. Thanks to the amazing team of TEDx Bitsati for giving me this wonderful opportunity and helping me throughout. Thank you.